Hashtag Port Charles on the brink, a resurrection, a reckoning, and the shadow of a monster. Port Charles has never been a town that accepts the quiet passage of time. It prefers ruptures, those sudden, seismic shocks that split the past from the present and force everyone to choose a side. This time, the fault line opens beneath a name carved into the city's grief, Nathan. Rumors, documents, and a hush of terror suggest the unthinkable. Nathan West did not die as everyone believed. That one possibility redraws the map for almost every major player in town, setting off a chain reaction of legal battles, family implosions, and a manhunt through the darkest corners of the spy world. Hashtag a mother's grief becomes a weapon. No one understands the cost of Port Charles better than Liesl Albrecht. She is buried more than most mothers could endure, and she has non-negotiable rules about truth and loyalty carved into her bones. The whisper that Nathan might be alive does not inspire relief, it ignites fury. If this is true, then someone orchestrated a masterpiece of deception, and that someone allowed a mother to mourn her son while the son breathed somewhere else. The last time Liesl uncovered a betrayal on this scale, her rage came with a clean, stinging crack across a face she loved. If this new treachery leads back to the same well of secrets, she may not hesitate to deliver another reckoning, the kind you feel before you hear. What happens when perpetual mourning is revealed as a managed narrative? Liesl is already stitching together fragments, hospital logs that should have been sealed, an anesthesiologist who left town without a forwarding address, a transport manifest that lists an unidentified male moved under armed watch the night Nathan died. The logic terrifies her because it is too neat. If someone staged one death, what stopped them from staging others? And if Nathan survived, it means a conspiracy that stretched through the morgue, the police, and beyond. Port Charles has seen elaborate lies, this would be the crown jewel. Hashtag Maxie's marriage, suspended in amber. If Nathan lives, the law has an uncomfortable habit of being literal. Maxie Jones, frozen in hospital silence by a meticulously engineered coma, would still be Nathan's wife. The paperwork says so. The rings say so. The entire scaffolding of her later relationship suddenly becomes a house of cards, and every card is labeled invalid, improper, or not quite what you thought. Guardianship arrangements wobble. Financial decisions turn suspect. Even casual promises take on the weight of perjury when the law is brutal and uncomplicated. The cruelty is theatrical, the one person whose will, memory, and heart matter most is the one person unable to speak. Maxie cannot raise a hand to demand a DNA test, cannot insist that her grief remain hers if this is a trick, cannot accept or refuse a man who was once her entire future. She sleeps while the world rearranges her past, present, and possible tomorrows. Worse, her coma is not an accident. It bears the fingerprints, cold, precise, and unashamed, of Jen Sidwell. Hashtag Jen Sidwell's calculus of control. In boardrooms and back channels, Jen Sidwell presents himself as a problem solver, a man who can convert crisis into currency. The truth is simpler and uglier. Sidwell enjoys power because it allows him to turn people into levers. Maxie's condition is exactly that, a lever designed to move an otherwise immovable world. He has spent months testing the fragility of Port Charles by targeting the connective tissue between families, friendships, marriages, and shared grief. A coma is ideal sabotage. It creates sympathy without answers, paralysis without closure. It forces adversaries to negotiate on their knees. What did Sidwell gain by silencing Maxie? Perhaps she was learning too much about the pharmaceutical shell companies propping up his empire. Perhaps she had stumbled onto old DVX channels kept alive for special projects, the kind of projects that end with people vanishing and reappearing with new biographies. Or perhaps her silence simply hurts the maximum number of people Sidwell needs to control. In any case, Maxie's bed is not a medical outcome, it is a strategy. Hashtag Anna Devane follows the smoke. When the lies are this elegant, Anna Devane looks for the single inelegant seam. She starts with logistics, a body that never matched the original Me notes, surveillance cameras that failed in a pattern too clean to be random, a courier route that runs parallel to a decommissioned DVX airway corridor. The details form a lattice, and at the center of it, a familiar shadow leans, Caesar Faison. Names from the past are not ghosts in Port Charles, they're keys. Turn them and entire doors swing open. If Faison is alive, or if someone is using his methods like a signature, the threat is immediate. Anna knows the difference between a city that is frightened and a city being prepared. The small, strange things start to recur: burner phones that activate for 7 minutes at exact intervals, cash withdrawals indexed to international market closes, a compromised informant who suddenly quotes Faison's favorite aphorisms about love and leverage. She has hunted devils before, but this one knows her habits. He knows Port Charles's blind spots. He certainly knows how to tie Liesel Albrecht in knots and make her part of a puzzle she refuses to solve. ## Michael vs. Drew, justice, leverage, and a child in the middle. Far from the spycraft, a different kind of war heats up. Michael Corinthos calculates every move to avoid prison. He treats the law the way Sidwell treats people, as a system to be gamed, bent, and reshaped. Drew Kane, by contrast, wants a verdict to slam shut like a cell door. Not because the sound is satisfying, but because he believes the sentence reopens something else. A path for Willow Tate to be reunited with a child Michael keeps in the margins of his power. Where Michael sees an indictment he must escape, Drew sees a remedy he must achieve. It would be simpler if the evidence were clean. It is not. Michael's defenders insist the charges are the byproduct of a vendetta, that every file has been salted with unrelated misconduct to create a storm of suspicion. Drew's allies, exasperated and tired of moral gymnastics, argue that accountability is not revenge, that the rule of law is worthless if it collapses around a family name. The court is only one battlefield. Public opinion, inevitably, becomes another, and in this town, public opinion is both judge and weapon. ## When the hunter becomes the target. The first attempt on Drew's life looked like chaos wrapped in coincidence. The second, less so. If someone is trying to remove him from the board, the motive tree has too many branches to count. It could be Michael's enemies making sure their preferred narrative wins. It could be Sidwell, clearing any piece that refuses to be leveraged. It could be an old DVX residue, one of those sleepers who awakens only when the right name appears in the news. The PCPD, to its credit, has stopped treating the attacks like isolated strokes of bad luck. The suspect pool expands as the city's patience contracts. Drew refuses to be deterred, but resolve looks dangerously like hubris when the opposition is organized. He is no stranger to the collateral damage that comes from defiance, and every attempt to intimidate him only deepens his insistence that the truth must be crushed out of the system, no matter how long it takes or how many times he has to rebuild from ashes. ## The legal time bomb of a man who might not be dead. Should Nathan step into the light, every transaction tied to his death certificate becomes a legal landmine. Insurance payouts, estate distributions, contractual clauses triggered by his passing, even the sworn statements people gave at the time, all of it is reopened. Port Charles runs on paperwork and passion, and both now threaten to devour each other. Lawyers sharpen pens. Families prepare to testify against people they love. The concept of closure, fragile on the best days, disintegrates like sugar in rain. For Maxie, the implications are intimate. The vows she whispered were never dissolved by death, they were archived by a mistake or a lie. If Nathan lives and if she wakes, every choice she made afterward must be remeasured against a promise that never legally ended. It is a paradox only soap operatic life can produce, love as both sanctuary and trap. ## Liesel's line in the sand. All of this funnels back to Liesel. A mother who believes her children were taken by the same darkness cannot be negotiated with, she can only be confronted or respected. She will chase answers with the same intensity others deploy to minimize exposure. She will bang on the doors of those who mocked her grief and force them to look at the trail they pretended not to see. She has accepted that forgiveness is a luxury for people who did not watch a casket close on a lie. When the truth surfaces, whatever it is, Liesel will not measure her response in decibels but in consequences. She has no appetite for symbolic resolution. She wants names, charges, and a city that does not look away when the cost of comfort is complicity. Hashtag Anna's last, necessary risk. Anna understands that the quickest path to the architect runs through the oldest scar. If Faison is the ghost beneath these events, then chasing him will require an old fluency, the kind that blurs professional judgment with personal history. She will follow the money to an offshore clinic rumored to specialize in post-fatal rehabilitation, translate a data dead drop encoded with nursery rhymes, and pursue a courier who vanishes on a pier where the security cameras are always down for maintenance. Every step forward concedes something to the past, and every concession makes her a little easier to predict. But the city needs the hunter more than it fears the bait. Anna has never been reckless, she has been necessary. She knows how to stare into the machinery of a lie until the cogs declare themselves. She will not stop until the hands guiding those cogs belong to someone she can put in cuffs, or, if the law cannot hold, someone the truth can destroy. Hashtag Willow at the crossroads. While men argue the dimensions of justice, Willow stands at a crossroads that refuses to speak in absolutes. Her heart carries a ledger of debts, love owed, safety promised, second chances granted and revoked. The question the town keeps asking on her behalf is the wrong one. It is not whether she will get back together with Michael as if romance were a circuit that could be reconnected by flipping a switch. It is whether she can trust her world to stop moving long enough for a choice to mean anything. That requires stability, and stability cannot exist while court dates loom, masked enemies play with comas, and the past insists it never ended. Hashtag the weeks ahead, no clean exits. Port Charles is about to live inside a paradox, everything will change, and nothing will be simple. If Nathan is alive, the city will have to absorb a joy so sharp it cuts. If Faison is behind the curtain again, a generation that learned to breathe after his reign will learn to hold its breath once more. If Sidwell's lattice of leverage snaps, the debris will land on every household that mistook silence for safety. If the courts choose accountability over pedigree, a dynasty will discover whether it knows how to function without impunity. The engine is already turning, a mother following a thread that leads into the teeth of the past, a lawman who keeps standing even as someone repeatedly tries to erase him, a strategist who thinks he can buy outcomes with other people's pain. An investigator who refuses to let a monster convert old love into new weakness, a woman asleep in a room everyone visits but no one truly enters, a town that has learned, again and again, that survival requires looking horror in the eye. There are no bystanders where the heart of this city beats. Each revelation invites two more secrets, and every secret demands a price. Before the month is out, rings will be weighed, oaths revisited, alliances redrawn, and at least one truth, long buried and fiercely protected, will detonate in public. Port Charles is not ready. It never is. That has never stopped it from enduring.